Hey, we made it back to Spirit Music Meetups. Mike Burris here. And we are on blog topic 3 of knowing God, knowledge. It's just what the Bible talks about knowledge. Wow, that was fun. Spontaneous music. Buddy Rich, man. So we are on knowledge of God was prophesied in the Old Covenant to radically change in the New Covenant. You know, go look at the New Covenant. It is radically different in kind. You know, completely different. Unprecedented. Nothing like it. Completely different. Sorry, I just got to get comfortable. And you'll see this. Hebrews 8:11 in the New Testament cites Jeremiah 31:34 in the Old Testament because it radically distinguishes the completely different in kind, that's the word chadash or kainos, New Covenant, from the Old Covenant. For the definitions of chadash and Greek kainos mean, chadash is Hebrew, fresh, completely different in kind, unprecedented, sharing nothing with its predecessors, unique, and thus superior. In Jeremiah 31 through 32, God drives this home. I will make a new covenant. Here it goes. I will make a new covenant. And there's a link for that. So go follow the page link. Absolutely, in fact, not. That's what you got to really get. Absolutely, in fact, not. This is an absolute negative. Like the covenant that I had made, right, with your forefathers. My previous covenant, they broke. The Jews, the Lord led out of Egypt, had indeed broken it. So how was it any longer useful? Right? How was it any longer useful? They broke it. And so go look at the New Covenant link. And I will give you that link right here. On the bottom of every page, I've put a site map. So you can find things very quickly. And there is a link called New Covenant on the bottom there, and I'll just stick it up here in the page so you can find it quickly. And there's links that I will put in here at some point in the future, but just here and there, right? There is a how do I say this? There is one radical difference, right? There's many differences, but one radical difference is that the Torah law of God will no longer, the law means instruction. The Torah law or instruction of God will no longer be commandments. That's what it was in the Old Covenant. Written on stone or paper for God's people to learn from human teachers, right? And how do they do this? Read, study, debate, or memorize. There's just different ways to do this. They can learn it from teachers who do this, or they can do it themselves. Read, study, debate, or memorize in order to experientially or relationally, yada, it's the Hebrew, gnoskos, the Greek, know the Lord. That's what it says. No longer. Absolutely. In fact, this time, however, according to Jeremiah 31:33 through 34, God says, I will put my law within them. You get that? There's a difference. It's not on paper. It's not on stone tablets. This is how God's going to do it in the new covenant. And you know, until I pulled on this thread, I didn't know this. I went to a lot of Bible colleges. I went to a lot of churches, 15 music ministries, sat through thousands of sermons. I think I've heard it all. It says, my law will put my law, this is the verse meaning principles or instruction, within them I will write it on their hearts, and coupled absolutely in fact and in possibility no longer. Do you catch that? He uses a double ume, which means a double negative, right? A double absolute negative. Two different kinds. Basically, no longer again shall each person. See, it's again. This is what they used to do. They had to teach their neighbor, which meant those like themselves, fellow Jews, and coupled each person his brother, and that's their family members, to experientially, relationally, epigenosko know the Lord. For my people shall all, that's really key. My people shall all. This is what, you know what shall in the Greek means? It means they will in the future, when this comes to be, when this prophecy is fulfilled, they're going to actually, they shall all actually, that's the indicative mood, they shall all actively and actually mentally see, to perceive or know. That's the Septuagint, right? The Greek is the Septuagint. That's the Septuagint Greek translation. To Ido, mentally see, to perceive or know me. Now, this is the caveat. This is not the old way, which is from the greatest to the least, from Moses to Aaron, Aaron's sons, to the Levitical priesthood, and then to the men of every tribe, who then in the homes only, not in the synagogue, but in the homes, they could teach the women, the wives, and the wives would teach the children. And then the bottom of the barrel was teaching servants or slaves, many of which came from Egypt, from Exodus. And so this is from the top down, from the greatest to the least. Here it says in the new covenant, it's from the least of them to the greatest. This is very rarely used phrase, from the least of them. So I have a link called the least of them. So you want to go look at that. To the greatest. That is the caveat. From the least of them to the greatest. And this is why Jesus is always talking about the greatest shall be last, and the least among you, the youngest, the little children, the last shall be first. And he turned the whole thing up because that's the new covenant. You can't use any stronger language to say that new covenant ways are completely different in kind, right? They're completely different in kind than the old covenant ways. It's a double. You can't say it any stronger. It's very upsetting to hear Christians and churches say that the New Testament is a continuation of the Old Testament, but albeit better somehow. Somehow better. It's better. Oh yeah, the New Testament's better, but it's a continuation, and that we should continue the same hierarchy of teachers and leaders in the church. Now I have links for all these things, so you can go out and see them and judge for yourself. There's teachers and leaders in the church. That's just crazy. Everything that talks about the new covenant says it's a clean break, complete clean break. There's no continuity here, and so you have to look at that. The only continuity there is it says the Old Testament is just shadows. But the New Testament, the New Covenant coming, Christ and what he talked about are the substance or reality. So that's a continuity. But these are like fuzzy, hazy shadows. Why are we studying hazy shadows? I don't get it. That's another radical difference between the old and the new. The old was taught. It was taught from the top down through a hierarchy of authoritative teachers and leaders. That's what they were. They were teachers and leaders. That's very important to know, and it was from the top down. From Moses all the way down to the uneducated children and slaves. Jesus destroys this hierarchy. In fact, the New Testament explains that the kingdom of God comes to the so-called least or last, right? The least or last first. That's what he says. And the so-called greatest or first last. That's what he says in many places, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 places. So you want to see these pages that I've created that go into all this. There's a lot of pages here: teaching, leading, coaches and facilitators. That's your leaders. So I have a reflection here that we should consider as Christians or Christian musicians. We're going to see this more in future blogs here, but this gets us started. We want to see, as Christians or Christian musicians, are we even aware of the radically different way to knowing God and His will between the Old and New Testaments? I mean, are we even aware of that? We've already talked about some of it. Are we still telling people to read? Because I run into a lot of people, they don't know the difference. It's like, wow, they get what they get, little bits and pieces from church, and they don't even know what. A lot of times the pastors are too busy to actually study anything. Are we still telling people to read about God and His principles, ways, and instruction like the Jews were told to? That's what they were told to do, to read. Read, study, read. Go to church, learn from your teachers. Are we still relying on a hierarchy of teachers to disseminate the knowledge of God? Are we keeping the uneducated? Are we keeping them on the bottom of the stack because of this old paradigm? Yeah, we are. We're saying you better buy a Bible, $40, $50, whatever it is, and you better start reading and studying and underlining, buy some highlighters. What about the people who can't afford this or are not educated? We are keeping them on the bottom. We're saying this is how you can know God, and you got to come to us. We're the ones the arbiters of truth, and you have to come to us. It doesn't matter if you can't get to us. We'll get to you somehow. We'll bust you out there. Anyway, this goes on and on and on. It's saying that nobody can know God unless you're, went to Bible colleges. And I'm not saying that. You'll see that I'm not saying that. No one can know God unless you go through all this work. And you got a lot of money to do it because, it takes a lot of money. It takes money to buy all these tools and, all this stuff. So you can go look at Bible Info. You can see what I'm talking about. But let's go to the next blog and see what it has to say. But put your comments down here on the bottom. We teach one another, 1 Corinthians 14:26, and read the whole chapter 14. It'll explain that. It's body ministry. It's body ministry, not just one person. Romans chapter 12, verse 3. It's not one person. It's not one person wearing all the hats. It's about the body. Read the other verses and tell you. It's really about how the body functions together. It's a word called praxis. So we got to look at this. We got to do, if we're going to read this darn book, we better start doing what it says. We're doing the opposite. It's this kind of crazy thing, you know. Read the book, but then do the opposite. It's and then tell people that we read the book. We're people of the book. But then you don't do anything that they said to do or not do. I mean, you pick and choose, right? The knowledge of God. All right, here we go.